I used to think the worst betrayal came from strangers. Turns out it can come from the people who are supposed to love you the most. My name is Noah, and when I turned 21, my entire world imploded. My stepmother, Rebecca, falsely accused me of something so vile, it cost me my family, my future, and almost my sanity. But let me rewind to how it all started. My parents split when I was 9. It wasn't a messy divorce. If anything, they handled it like two mature adults who wanted what was best for me. I lived with my mom, Claire, during the week since her place was closer to school. On weekends, I'd stay with my dad, Thomas. Despite the distance between their homes, I never felt torn between them. They both showed up. Always. By the time I was 11, Dad introduced me to a woman he'd been seeing, Rebecca. She was all shiny smiles and sweet compliments. I remember thinking, wow, she's really nice. She had 2 kids from a previous relationship, twin girls, Alyssa and Amber. They were 13 then, and chaotic is the polite way to put it. Tantrums over the wrong cereal, dramatic meltdowns in public, it was nonstop. But I kept to myself. I've always been the quiet, observant type. The kind of kid who'd rather be drawing or reading than getting into drama. When I turned 12, Dad married Rebecca in a small backyard wedding. Even my mom came and hugged him afterward, which I thought was kind of amazing. At the time, I genuinely believed our new blended family had potential. I was so wrong. For a couple of months, things seemed fine. Rebecca treated me okay, polite even. But then, one Saturday morning while Dad was out running errands, she walked into the kitchen, leaned against the counter, and with a look of pure disdain said, "Let's not pretend, Noah. I don't like you, and you don't belong here." I remember blinking at her, confused. She continued, "I only put up with you for your dad's sake. So when he's around, you smile, you nod. But when he's not? Stay out of my sight." I was 12. Her words stung like acid. I didn't even know what I had done wrong. I remember just nodding slowly, trying not to cry. And that was the beginning of hell. Her daughters caught on quick. Alyssa and Amber took every chance to tease me. "Dad likes us more than you," they'd whisper behind his back. "He wishes you weren't even born." I tried to tell my mom. She was furious and called my dad that same day. But he brushed it off, saying I must have misunderstood. "Rebecca loves you," he insisted. I wish I could say that was the last time I tried to speak up. The next weekend, Rebecca cornered me again. This time, her voice was low and sharp. "Tell your mom anything again," she said, "and I'll make sure you never see your dad again. I'll divorce him. Take everything, leave him with nothing. You want that? At 12, you believe threats like that." So I stayed quiet. She bullied me in small, cruel ways. She'd insult how I looked. Tell me I was too pale, too skinny, too awkward. She'd make fun of my voice, my clothes. I hoped Dad would notice, but he never did. To him, we were a happy family. He even thought it was a good idea for bonding if we went out together. We'd go to restaurants where she'd order giant meals for herself and the twins and give me soup. Literally, soup. If I asked for more, she'd smile sweetly and say, "You don't need that, honey. Gotta keep your figure." At night, I'd go to bed with a growling stomach. No matter how much I tried to avoid her, it was never enough. She'd burst into my room without knocking. She'd accuse me of being lazy, disgusting, ungrateful. And when Dad was home, she'd play the perfect stepmom, laughing, offering me cookies she never baked. It made me feel like I was going crazy. By the time I was 14, I dreaded weekends. I faked being sick, pretended I had school projects. Anything to avoid going. My dad would call, confused and hurt. "I miss you, buddy," he'd say. And I'd just nod, staring at the wall, feeling like the worst son on earth. Then came the trip. Dad surprised all of us with a family vacation to Italy. My mom encouraged me to go, said it would be good for me. So I did. Big mistake. Rebecca was on her best behavior the entire time. To everyone else, she was glowing with maternal affection. To me, subtle digs, constant jabs. She'd say things like, "Basketball? Maybe chess is more your style," while laughing at my height, never mind I was 6 already. The twins were relentless, whispering behind my back, making fat jokes one second, calling me scrawny the next. I bit my tongue until one day, I snapped. We were by the pool. Alyssa joked that I looked like a cursed noodle. I looked right at her and said, "At least I don't need 3 layers of makeup to look human." Then I turned to Rebecca and said, "You shouldn't wear horizontal stripes. Makes you look like a collapsed beach ball. You could have heard a pin drop." She stormed off crying. Dad lost it. "What is wrong with you?" he yelled later that night. "She's been bullying me for years." I yelled back. "She and the twins treat me like trash." He didn't believe me. He made me apologize. When we got home, I told my mom everything. She was livid. Called my dad and said if Rebecca ever spoke about my weight or appearance again, she'd involve Child Protective Services. After that, Rebecca went radio silent, at least to my face. But the damage was done. From then on, she didn't speak to me at all. Honestly, it was a relief, but the silence didn't last. When I turned 16, Mom had to leave town for work, so I stayed with Dad for a few days. Rebecca complained nonstop. "Why do I have to cook for him?" she muttered, thinking I couldn't hear. So I cooked dinner for everyone. They loved it. One of her friends even said, "Noah, you're going to make some lucky girl very happy someday." "Rebecca?" She smiled through gritted teeth. Later that night, I overheard her talking to her friends on the patio. "I can't stand that boy. He's so smug, always acting like he's better than us. I can't wait until he's out of this house." I wanted to scream, but instead I packed up quietly and left the next morning. After that, I only visited when absolutely necessary. And each visit felt like walking into enemy territory. But nothing prepared me for what happened at 21. That's when she destroyed my life. When I turned 21, my dad called out of the blue. He sounded different, excited, almost nervous. "I want you to come by next weekend," he said. "There's something important I want to tell the whole family." I hesitated. I hadn't been over in nearly a year. Most of my visits had turned into exercises in emotional survival. But when I mentioned it to my mom, she looked thoughtful and said, "Maybe it's good news, honey. You should hear him out." So I went. Rebecca greeted me at the door like I was a door-to-door salesman. No smile, just a nod. Alyssa and Amber were already on the couch, glued to their phones. They didn't even look up. I walked past them, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. That night, we all sat down to dinner my dad, Rebecca, and the twins. It had been years since we'd eaten at the same table. My dad beamed like it was Thanksgiving. He poured wine, laughed loudly at his own jokes, and kept saying how grateful he was for his 3 girls and his son. Rebecca wore her fake smile like it was part of her makeup routine. I could see right through it. I think she knew I could. Finally, after dessert, Dad tapped his glass with a spoon and said, "So, I've been thinking about the future." Everyone went still. He talked about losing a close friend recently, how it reminded him life was short and unpredictable, that he wanted to make sure everything was in order for all of us. That's when he mentioned the will. Rebecca's face lit up like she'd just won the lottery. Alyssa and Amber stopped scrolling and suddenly looked very interested. Dad continued, "If anything happens to me, Rebecca gets the house. It's her home now, too." She clutched his hand dramatically and mouthed a silent thank you. Then he turned to me. "Noah, I'm leaving you my retirement account and the Camaro." My jaw nearly dropped. That car was sacred. My dad bought it before I was born. He used to spend whole weekends fixing it up, waxing it like it was a living thing. We bonded over that car. It was more than just metal and rubber, it was memory. He added, "You're the only one I trust to take care of it." It should have been a proud moment. But across the table, Rebecca's smile had evaporated. Alyssa and Amber exchanged a quick glance, their mouths tightening. Then came the backlash. "Wait, what?" Amber said. "You're giving him that car and the entire retirement? I don't even have a job yet." Alyssa whined. "How is that fair?" Rebecca jumped in, all sugar-coated venom. "Honey, don't you think maybe the girls need more support? I mean, they're women. They'll have a harder time financially. And Noah's a man, he'll land on his feet." Dad shook his head. "I already paid for their education. The joint account you and I share will be theirs to split. The house is yours. Everyone's taken care of." Rebecca's lips tightened. "Except Noah's getting more." I didn't say a word. I could feel the air getting heavy, like a storm was about to hit. Dad tried to lighten the mood. "I thought you'd all be happy I planned this out." Then Rebecca stood up, shaking slightly. I can't pretend anymore. I've been quiet long enough. The room went silent. My fork clattered against my plate. She looked right at me. Noah has made me feel unsafe in this house. For years. I blinked. What? She teared up on cue. You remember the Italy trip, Thomas? After that, things changed. He started staring at me, following me, trying to come into my room. My brain stopped functioning for a second. What the hell are you talking about? She kept going. He would show up when I was in the shower, linger around me when we were alone. And one night, I was sure he was going to force himself on me. Dad's eyes widened. I couldn't breathe. I looked at him, searching for any sign of disbelief. Instead, he looked at me like he didn't know who I was. Dad, Rebecca interrupted. I didn't say anything because I wanted to protect him. I thought maybe it was just confusion, hormones. But it got worse. I lived in fear. You're lying, I shouted. Are you insane? She burst into sobs, leaning into my dad's chest. I didn't want to do this, but I have to. Alyssa and Amber started screaming at me. You predator! You sick freak! I couldn't believe what was happening. It felt like a surreal, slow-motion nightmare. I kept yelling, denying it, trying to make them listen, but the more I protested, the more I looked guilty. My dad stood up. Noah, I think it's best you leave. Right now. What? You're throwing me out? Over this? His voice broke. I don't know what to believe, but I need time. Please, just go. I stared at him for a long time. Then I walked out. I went straight to my mom's place, numb and cold. When she opened the door and saw my face, she knew something was wrong. I collapsed on the couch and told her everything. Every twisted lie. Every betrayal. She didn't hesitate. That woman is evil. I nodded slowly. I'm done. With all of them. For the next few months, I kept my distance, changed my number, moved cities, enrolled in therapy. At first, I thought the pain would crush me, but my mom stood by me every second, and eventually, so did someone else, Lena. We met through a mutual friend. She was the first person who made me laugh again, the first person who saw me not the broken version of myself. I didn't tell her everything right away, but when I did, she held my hand and said, You didn't deserve that. None of it. I started to heal, slowly. Then, out of nowhere, 7 years later, my phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, but something told me to check it. It was my dad. His voice sounded old, tired, like life had wrung him out. Noah, it's me. Please call me back. I need to talk to you. I made a terrible mistake. My heart pounded like it used to all those years ago, but this time, I wasn't that scared little kid anymore. This time, I wanted answers. I didn't return my dad's call right away. I stared at my phone for hours, his voicemail looping in my head like a ghost whispering through the walls. I made a terrible mistake. No context, no apology, just those 6 words, like they were enough to patch 7 years of silence and betrayal. Lena noticed my mood shift almost immediately. We were watching a movie on the couch, but I wasn't really there. My mind was caught somewhere between the past and that voicemail. You okay? She asked gently, brushing her fingers across mine. I didn't answer at first. Then I exhaled slowly and said, My dad called. She paused the movie. After all this time? Yeah, said he made a mistake. Didn't say what. But I know what he's talking about. She gave me a look that was equal parts caution and care. Are you going to call him back? I don't know. Part of me wants to. The other part wants to throw my phone in the ocean. Lena squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, I'll back you up. The next morning, I woke up early. Couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. So I did what I always do when I'm spiraling. I went for a walk. The city was still quiet. That peaceful hour before the world fully wakes up. As I passed the bakery on the corner, I remembered being a kid, grabbing croissants with Dad on Sundays. The memory hit harder than I expected. I took out my phone, called him. It rang twice before he answered. Noah? His voice cracked like old wood. You called. I want to know what you meant in the voicemail. Silence. Then, can we talk in person? No, I said flatly. Just talk. He sighed. I divorced Rebecca. I blinked. What? She cheated on me. With my best friend. I didn't say anything. Just let him keep talking. She admitted everything, he continued. Said she never loved me, used me. That she married me for money. And when she found out I was planning to leave you the Camaro and retirement, she panicked. There it was. He kept going, his voice lower now. She made it up. All of it. The accusations, the stories. She said she wanted you out of the way. Said she thought I'd cut you off and move on. And she was right, I did. I felt numb. My hands clenched at my sides, fingers curling into fists. She told me she hated you because you reminded her of your mom. He added, that you were too smart, too calm, and that scared her. She thought you'd ruin her plans. I laughed bitterly. And you believed her over your own son. I didn't know what to believe. She cried. She told the twins. And they joined in because they wanted more of your money. I finished for him. More silence. I'm so sorry, Noah, he finally whispered. But sorry didn't cut it. I begged you to believe me, I said, trying to hold back the heat rising in my chest. I stood in front of you, crying, swearing I didn't do it, and you still kicked me out. I know. No, you don't. You don't know what it's like to be accused of something so sick by your own family. To have your name turned into something disgusting. I lost everything, Dad, and you let it happen. His breathing was shaky now. I've thought about you every day since. I was too ashamed to call. I didn't know how to fix it. You can't fix it. I just want a chance to explain. Maybe see you. Maybe start over. I laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was the kind that scrapes your throat on the way out. You want a fresh start? After you let a manipulative woman destroy your relationship with your son? He didn't respond. She's out of your life now, so suddenly you're ready to be a dad again? That's convenient. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I had to try. I stood still on the sidewalk, staring at the sun rising between buildings, washing everything in soft gold. I remembered being 7, holding his hand as we crossed this very street. He was my hero once. Now, I didn't recognize him. I have nothing left to say, I told him. Goodbye, and I hung up. Later that day, I told Lena everything. She sat beside me, not interrupting once, just listening. When I finished, she didn't give me some fluffy speech. She just said, "You didn't owe him that call, but I'm proud of you for facing it." Then she hugged me so tightly, it felt like it was keeping all my broken pieces together. A few days passed. Then came the messages. His sisters, my cousins, even my dad's old coworkers. Somehow, word had spread that I had refused to speak to him, and suddenly, I was the villain in a redemption story I never asked to be in. You're punishing a man who's already suffered enough. He just wants to make things right. Blood is thicker than water. Funny how no one said a word when I was drowning in accusations. But now that my dad was the one left alone, I was supposed to rush in and play the good son? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called my mom. She picked up on the first ring. "Sweetheart, I need to talk. Really talk." She came over that evening. Lena was there too. I sat them both down and, for the first time, told them everything. Every manipulation. Every threat. Every cruel thing Rebecca had whispered when no one else was around. I told them about the time she forced me to eat soup while they had steak. How she told me I was ugly, unwanted. How she'd search my room like I was a criminal in my own home. As I spoke, I didn't realize how much I'd been holding in. The words came out like a flood. By the time I finished, my mom's face was pale with rage. Lena was holding back tears. "Noah," my mom whispered, reaching for my hand. "You should have told me sooner." "I didn't want to make it worse," I said. "She said she'd ruin Dad's life if I ever said anything." "She did ruin his life," she snapped. "And yours?" Lena looked me in the eyes. "You're not broken. You survived something awful. That takes strength most people don't have." I felt lighter that night. Not healed, but lighter. And that was a start. A few months passed. Lena and I moved into a new apartment. My mom came over often. Life was still hard, but there was peace. And for once, I felt in control. Then something happened I didn't expect. My dad's lawyer called. He left me the Camaro. Just the car. No apologies. No explanations. Just keys, mailed in a box. and a note scribbled on hotel stationery. I can't undo what I did. But maybe you can still have what we once shared. Take care of her, Dad. I stared at the note for a long time. Then I tucked it back in the box. The car sat in the garage for weeks before I could even touch it. But when I did, when I sat behind the wheel and ran my hand over the steering wheel, it didn't feel like his anymore. It felt like mine. It's strange how healing doesn't come all at once. It doesn't show up with trumpets or fanfare. It creeps in during quiet mornings when you realize you didn't wake up with anxiety in your chest. It's sipping coffee without checking your phone for angry messages. It's realizing your past doesn't own you anymore. That's where I was. I didn't forgive my dad, not yet. Maybe not ever. But I wasn't carrying the weight like I used to. The guilt that wasn't mine. The shame that never belonged to me. I had started putting it down. And God, it felt good. The Camaro sat in the garage like a memory frozen in metal. I'd open the door sometimes just to stare at it. It reminded me of who I used to be before Rebecca's lies ruined everything. That car was the one thing he ever gave me that felt pure. That note, still tucked in the glove compartment. I never responded. Some days, I thought about burning it. Other days, I just drove. Lena was the first person who made me believe in safe love again. She never pushed. Never tried to fix me. She just stood beside me, even when I was a storm. On the nights I couldn't sleep, she'd just hold my hand and listen to the silence with me. One night, while lying on the couch with our feet tangled under a blanket, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" I didn't even pretend not to know who she meant. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't think he deserves it. But sometimes I wonder if I'm the one still holding on to a burning rope." She nodded. "You don't owe him anything, but you do owe yourself peace." That stayed with me. I started therapy 6 months after he called. I wish I could say I went right away, but I didn't. I told myself I was fine, that I'd moved on. But deep down, I knew something was broken, something I couldn't fix with walks or long talks, or even Lena's love. The first session was awkward. I didn't know where to begin. So I just said, "My stepmother ruined my life, and my dad let her." The therapist didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "Tell me what happened." And I did, in pieces. Over weeks, every cruel word, every threat, every moment I kept quiet to protect a man who never once protected me. I told him how I felt like I disappeared in that house, like a shadow, present, but unseen. He said something that stuck with me. "You were a child, Noah. You were surviving the only way you knew how." I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear that. Around that same time, Lena and I started talking about the future. One lazy Saturday, we were making pancakes when she turned to me with syrup on her cheek and asked, "Would you ever want to get married?" I smiled. "To you? Every day?" She blushed, rolled her eyes, and flipped a pancake that almost hit the ceiling. 3 months later, I proposed. Not with a grand gesture, no cameras, no flash mobs. Just the two of us on the beach, the wind in our hair, and a ring I picked because it reminded me of her simple, honest, and full of light. She cried. I cried. My mom cried over FaceTime. It was perfect. Speaking of my mom, God, I owe her everything. She never gave up on me. Not once. She was the one who held me when I had panic attacks at 15, the one who drove across town just to sit with me after bad weekends at Dad's, the one who defended me when nobody else would. I told her about the engagement first, of course. She showed up at our door the next morning with a bottle of champagne, a handmade quilt, and a 3-page list of wedding venues. Classic Claire. When I hugged her, I whispered, "Thank you for believing me when no one else did." She squeezed me tight. "I'll always believe you. You're my son." Sometimes the simplest words carry the most weight. But even with all the good in my life, ghosts have a way of lingering. One night, I got a message on Facebook from Amber. I hadn't heard from her in nearly a decade. It just said, "I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation, no name drop. Just those 2 words floating in my inbox like a pebble dropped in a still lake. I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to reply with a novel. Another part wanted to delete it and never look back. Instead, I left it on read, because that apology, it wasn't for me, it was for her. A way to ease her guilt. A way to say, "I feel bad now," without ever admitting what she helped destroy. She stood by while her mother tore my life apart. She threw fuel on the fire. She believed lies that never made sense because they were convenient. No, I didn't owe her anything. A week after that, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, sloppy. From my dad. Noah, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say something you can keep. Something you can burn if you want. I failed you. I failed as a father. I let someone poison my heart against my own blood. And I believed her because I wanted to believe my life made sense. Because admitting she was lying meant admitting I was a fool. You were never the monster she said you were. I see that now. I should have seen it then. Losing you is my punishment. If I could go back, I'd do it all differently. But I can't. All I can do is sit with this regret. I love you. I've always loved you, even when I didn't show it. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. I folded the letter and placed it in a box with the rest of the things I never asked for photos. The car keys, old baseball tickets from when I was 10. I didn't burn it, but I didn't answer either. Some things are better left unsaid. Lena and I got married that fall. The ceremony was small. Backyard, string lights. My mom made the cake. Her brother played acoustic guitar. Our vows weren't rehearsed, we spoke from the heart. When I looked into her eyes, I knew I wasn't just marrying her. I was marrying my peace, my future, a chapter I finally got to write for myself. After the kiss, while everyone clapped and cheered, I spotted my mom wiping her eyes. She smiled at me, and I felt something click in my chest. I had made it. Not because life was perfect, not because the scars were gone, but because I was no longer running from the pain. I had turned it into something real, something mine. Marriage didn't magically erase the past, but it did remind me that I'd survived it. Every morning I woke up next to Lena felt like proof. Proof that love didn't have to come with barbed wire, that trust didn't have to be earned by suffering. Still, trauma doesn't leave quietly. It knocks on the door at 2 a.m. Sometimes it sneaks in while you're brushing your teeth or choosing groceries. One second you're fine, the next you're standing in a parking lot, remembering the look on your father's face as he told you to leave. I thought I was done with the past, but the past wasn't done with me. It started small. An email, no name in the sender field, just a subject line that said, "You should hear the other side." At first, I ignored it. I had no appetite for half-hearted apologies or family drama. I had cut that part of my life clean. But then came the second email. "Noah, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need to try. I've been in therapy, and for the first time, I've been forced to see what my silence cost you. I didn't believe you when I should have. I sided with my mother because it was easier than questioning her. I told myself you were dangerous because that made her happy. I see now that I helped destroy a good person, and I'm sorry." It was signed Alyssa. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Weeks passed. Life carried on. Lena and I adopted a dog, half golden retriever, half chaos. We named him Murphy. He had way too much energy and destroyed 2 pairs of shoes in his first week. But when he curled up beside us at night, snoring like a freight train, it was impossible not to feel like our little home was complete. One evening, as we watched Murphy chase his tail in dizzy circles, Lena turned to me and said, "Do you think people can really change?" I knew what she was asking. She wasn't talking about random people. She meant them, my father, Rebecca's daughters, the ones who stood by while my life fell apart. I thought about it for a long moment. "I think some people realize too late what they've done," I said. "I think others never realize it at all. And a few, they change because the consequences finally catch up." Lena nodded. "Do you think that's what happened to Alyssa?" "I think therapy made her look in the mirror. Whether she likes what she saw, that's her battle." I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She always wanted me to find peace, but she never tried to manufacture it. She knew better than anyone that healing couldn't be forced. Then, one afternoon, my mom called. She sounded hesitant. "Sweetheart, I ran into your dad." My stomach dropped. "He looked different," she said quietly. "Thin, gray, tired." "He asked how you were?" I didn't say much. I waited, unsure of what I wanted her to say next. "He gave me this," she continued. "Said you might want it. It was a flash drive." She handed it to me later that night when she came for dinner. I didn't open it right away. I left it on my desk for 3 days, just stared at it like it might bite. On the fourth night, curiosity won. There were 3 files. One was a scanned photo of me at 10 years old, sitting in the Camaro's front seat, smiling like the world hadn't betrayed me yet. The second was a video. It opened with my dad sitting alone in what looked like a cheap motel room. No ring, no wedding band, just him and a shaky camera. "Noah," he said, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I need you to see me, really see me." He talked for 17 minutes straight. About the day he met Rebecca, about how she filled a void he didn't know he had, how she twisted reality in slow, quiet ways, until he didn't trust anyone but her. He cried. More than once, she convinced me you were the problem, that you were dangerous. And the worst part is, I believed her. I didn't even question it. I failed you in the worst possible way a father can fail a son. He wiped his face. I've lost everything. The house. The girls won't speak to me. I live alone now. I don't say that for sympathy. I say it because I deserve it. But even after everything, I still hope you're okay. I still hope you made it. The third file was a letter. Typed. Signed. It detailed everything. From the lies Rebecca fed him, to the argument they had when he discovered she'd been cheating with his friend for years. It even included a confession from Rebecca herself, handwritten and dated, saying she fabricated everything to secure the inheritance for herself and her daughters. Reading it didn't bring closure, but it did bring clarity. A week later, I found myself driving the Camaro again. Not for nostalgia, not for therapy, just because. The roads were quiet. The sun was setting behind a wash of orange and purple, the air warm enough to roll the windows down. Murphy's leash was in the back seat, and Lena had a playlist going soft, thoughtful music that wrapped around us like a blanket. We pulled into a small overlook, one of those places you only find if you're not looking for it. "I read the letter," I said softly. She didn't ask which one. "I watched the video too." Lena nodded. "Do you feel different?" "I feel sad," I admitted. "Not just for me, for him, for how much he let fear and pride turn him into a stranger." She reached over and held my hand. "You're not him," she whispered. "You never were." "That weekend," I replied to Alyssa's email. "Just a few lines. I appreciate the apology. I hope your therapy helps you become someone your future family can trust. But I'm not interested in rebuilding anything. Some doors stay closed for a reason." I didn't expect a reply, and she didn't send one. That was fine. Later that month, my mom surprised me again. She had found an old photo album in her attic, pages and pages of memories I had forgotten. Me with missing teeth, grinning at birthday cakes, riding a bike with training wheels, standing next to my dad, both of us holding greasy tools, proud of the engine we just cleaned together. I sat on the couch and flipped through them slowly. Some made me smile. Others made my chest tighten. At the end of the album, there was a Polaroid I'd never seen before. My dad holding me as a toddler, both of us asleep in a hammock. My mom stood behind me quietly. "That was one of the good days," she said. I nodded. "He had them, didn't he?" "Yes. But he lost himself somewhere along the way." I looked up at her. "Did I?" She smiled. "No, baby. You found yourself in the fire. There's this myth that healing ends with forgiveness. That to be whole again, you have to open your arms to the people who broke you. But I've learned that healing isn't about erasing the scars. It's about learning how to live with them without letting them shape your reflection." And that's exactly where I found myself. Not angry anymore, just clear. No more yelling into locked doors. No more waiting for the right apology or the perfect timing. Just me, standing in my own truth. Lena and I bought a small house outside the city. Quiet neighborhood, big backyard for Murphy to sprint around like a wild animal. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. On moving day, my mom brought sandwiches and a stack of old blankets. She insisted on making the bed herself, so you wake up in a place that feels like home. And that night, as I stood in the doorway of our new bedroom, watching Lena toss pillows with comical frustration, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Not the kind that comes with silence, but the kind that comes with finally arriving after years of wandering through chaos. One afternoon, I opened the garage and stood in front of the Camaro. I hadn't driven it in weeks. I'd kept it clean, battery charged, gas tank full. but I never really looked at it not the way I did when I was younger. Not the way I used to see it as an extension of my father, a symbol of everything I wanted to be. Now, it was just a car. Beautiful, yes. Sentimental, sure, but it didn't hold power over me anymore. I slid into the driver's seat. The leather was warm from the sun, the same familiar smell of old vinyl and oil still lingering in the air. I turned the key. The engine growled awake, smooth and steady. I drove. Not far, just through the winding back roads outside our neighborhood. Trees danced above the hood like they were waving me forward. No destination, no music, just the sound of tires on asphalt and my thoughts catching up. For the first time, I didn't think about my dad when I drove it. I thought about me. A few months later, I received an invitation. Mailed. Handwritten. The envelope was plain, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from him. Not a letter this time. A wedding invitation. His wedding. He was getting married again. The woman's name, Adele, was someone I didn't recognize. The ceremony was small, in a town I'd never been to, with a note at the bottom that read, "Noah, I would understand if you don't come, but I wanted you to know you're welcome. Always." I held the invitation for a while. Then I tossed it in the drawer with the others' old letters, the original confession, the photo of us in the hammock. I wasn't angry. I just didn't care anymore. That's when I realized I was finally free. There's something powerful about walking away with your head high, not out of pride, not out of spite, but because you finally understand your value. I don't need an audience to validate my pain. I don't need my father to grovel or my stepsisters to apologize with tears. What I needed, I already gave myself: truth, clarity, and a future untouched by their lies. Lena often told me I had the heart of someone who never gave up. I used to laugh at that, because there were times I wanted to quit. Times I nearly did. But she was right. I didn't give up. I built something better. Sometimes, I get messages from people on Reddit after I post updates. Strangers, mostly, they share stories of betrayal, of being disbelieved, of losing family for things they didn't do. They say things like, "Your story made me feel less alone. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for surviving. It blows me away every time." Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence is the enemy of healing. We're taught to keep family secrets buried, to be loyal to the people who break us, to keep our heads down and be the bigger person. But I say this now, from a place of peace and truth. Loyalty means nothing without safety, and you don't owe forgiveness to someone who never earned it. A few days ago, Lena and I sat on the back porch. It was late. The sky was full of stars. Murphy curled up at our feet. I had my guitar out, strumming a few clumsy chords I barely remembered from high school. "You ever think about reaching out again?" she asked softly, not looking at me. I shook my head. "No, he had his chance." She nodded. "I'm proud of you." I looked at her, at the life we built from ashes. "I'm proud of me too," I said. And I meant it. One last thing. For anyone reading this, whether it's on Reddit or somewhere else, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not the sum of what was done to you. You don't have to carry someone else's shame. You don't have to bleed so others can sleep well at night. You can walk away. You can rebuild. You can write your own ending. I did. And if I can, so can you. Thanks for listening. And thank you for believing me even when the people who should have didn't. Noah, Story 2. When I was 22, my family left me stranded at a rest station without a phone or money. They have now gotten in touch with me and requested money. I turned 22 that summer. The plan was for it to be like any other day. According to banks, my father's college was not feasible. Therefore, I would live at home and earn money working at his hardware business. Additionally, I was my golden kid brother Alan's constant target. Although we weren't poor, we weren't the kind to take Disney vacations. I should have realized something was wrong when banks said that we would be traveling by car to Colorado for my uncle's wedding. I already regretted not coming up with a reason to stay at home after 3 days of that awful road trip. Salvador's life had been miserable since my father and Alan had been taking turns playing their favorite game. Sometimes, in her weak voice, Mom Irene would exclaim, "That's enough," but we all knew it was a ruse. Look, I have to tell you about my family. Banks was no ordinary father. He was the kind of person who would wake you up at 3 in the morning to complain about a task. you neglected or who would throw away your possessions if they obstructed his path. He'd been saying that because I could understand language. I was useless. Alan soon understood that he could either become like me or be his father's little version of himself. Can you guess which path he took? We arrived to a rest area in Colorado that morning that appeared to be in the middle of nowhere, with just farms, distant mountains, and a dreary little restroom with vending machines. I needed to go to the bathroom and stretch my legs after sleeping in the back of our Suburban. Mom was looking at her cosmetics in the visor mirror as Dad and Alan were giggling about something. I recall my outfit, which included a worn-out Metallica t-shirt, pants with a hole in one knee, and these dilapidated Vans that I had owned for many years. My phone was charging in the car, so I didn't bring it. Why would I take my wallet when I didn't? I was simply urinating while we were in the middle of nowhere. I was in the toilet for 5 minutes, maybe less when I left, squinting in the Colorado light. There was no one in the parking space. We lost our dark green Suburban. I initially thought it was a scam that they had relocated. I explored the entire rest area. Nothing. The problem with betrayal by your own kin is that the way it hits is different from past times. They were only trying to frighten me, I told myself as I waited on the curb for an hour, and they would return. A few people gave me odd looks as they entered and went. A truck driver asked me whether I was okay. I pretended to be in the restroom waiting for my girlfriend. 2 hours later, he nodded and left. I started to become sick to my stomach. They had no intention of returning. At first, I considered using someone else's phone to call and ask them to come get me. But something stopped me just as I was ready to approach a lady with 2 kids. My head was filled with memories that would last a lifetime. Every humiliation, every instance in which they made fun of me, and every joke that was basically nasty with a humorous twist. I nearly heard them. The voice of Alan. He must be sobbing right now, dude. If my father isn't as dumb as he seems, he'll figure it out. Nothing changed despite my mother's feeble complaint. I decided as a result, I didn't call my family, but I went up to that mother and requested to use her phone. The phone number of the closest shelter, located in Grand Junction, some 40 miles away, was provided to me when I contacted information. I then asked her if she could drive me into town, explaining that my family would send someone for me later since they had to leave due to an emergency. She paused, but she acknowledged that the first night in the shelter was a reality check, so I must have been innocent enough. Other than the clothes on my back, I had nothing. No money, no relationships, no identity. I saw a wedding invitation and asked Dave, the shelter employee, if I could use their computer to get my uncle's address. I believed I would be able to see my family and attend the wedding. I wondered why, though, as I sat there looking at the television. For laughs, why go after those who actually left me on the side of the road? I created a new email account instead. I looked up emergency ID replacement providers, Googled cash-paying jobs, and came up with a strategy. I was doing the dishes at Sunny Geraldine, a little cafe, 2 days later. The owner was a woman in her 60s, with gray hair, streaked with purple and more tattoos than one might expect. I had gone in, asked if they needed assistance, and told her that I needed employment even though my wallet had been taken. "The dishwasher quit yesterday," she said as she signed me up. "You will perish if you steal from me. Get started right away. The problem with rock bottom is that's the only way out for a week." I slept in the shelter, put on donated clothes, and worked extra shifts. Using my first paycheck, Dave helped me get in touch with vital records in my home state to get a replacement ID. 7 days after Walmart abandoned me, I bought a cheap pay-as-you-go phone. My phone rang. No one knew the number. When I answered, my mother was there. She shook her voice. She wanted to know where I was and how I was feeling. They had searched all throughout. "It was just meant to be a joke," she said. After 20 minutes of waiting down the road, they came back and were unable to locate me. In the background, I heard her anxiety and fake sympathy. I could hear my dad urging me to go to Uncle Rick's and stop being so dramatic. Alan's laughter reached my ears. "Are you there, Salvador? Speak up. We've been quite anxious." I no longer had that cold feeling in my stomach. All that was left was clarity. "You wanted to know if I could get there by myself." I clarified, speaking to them with a stronger tone than before. "So keep an eye on me." After hanging up, I blocked the number and all the family numbers that sprang to mind. The next day, I changed my phone number at the Verizon shop. Absolutely. I saw their frustration growing as they came to terms with the fact that their punching bag would not be coming back to be battered. I had my own studio apartment above a laundromat a month later. It was mine, even though it was tiny and always smelled like fabric softener. At Sunny's, I advanced to the position of prep cook, and Geraldine was teaching me the ropes of properly chopping vegetables. My family was aware of my previous email address, which I occasionally checked. Mom had a mountain of messages. "Come home, please. We apologize on behalf of Dad. Alan needs to stop this silly stunt immediately. It was only a joke, dude. Quit being such a jerk." I never answered. Not once. The problem with freedom is that once you experience it, you can never return to the cage. I won't act like it was simple. On some evenings, when I browse Instagram, I come across pictures of people with typical families who genuinely loved one another, and I get a pain that nothing could ever ease. I had nights when I felt like I might die of loneliness. The worst times were during the holidays. Nevertheless, I would get up every morning in my run-down apartment that smelled like Downey, go to work doing dishes where no one thought I was worthless, and build my life one brick at a time. I checked my inbox for the final time 3 months after they left me at that rest stop. My mother had sent me a new message. "Your grandmother wants to know how you're doing. Just let us know you're still alive, please." I disposed of my old SIM card in the dumpster behind Sunny's, deleted the account, and closed the email. Geraldine taught me how to make her famous apple pie that evening. I was good at pastry, she said. I hadn't gotten a genuine compliment in a long time. I didn't turn around. Update: I was looking at a familiar face on my Facebook page 5 years after I was left behind at that rest area in Colorado. Not because I was stalking the profiles of my relatives. Perhaps I was. But Alan had just been featured in a local news article back home, where he was accused of DUI and had tangled his car around a telephone pole. Nobody hurt except the pole. The publication had utilized one of his high school football photos. He appeared youthful and smug, in stark contrast to the fat mugshot below. That's the thing with karma. It goes at its own pace and never forgets an address. By then, I had established something like a life in Colorado. My terrible studio above the laundromat was eventually exchanged for a one-bedroom with actual windows. I had worked my way up from dishwasher to line cook to assistant manager at Sunny's. Geraldine still ran the property with an iron fist and a flour-dusted glove, but she'd started treating me more like a quirky nephew than a charity case. My first major purchase when I had actual savings was a good laptop. Nothing spectacular. Just enough to attend online community college classes in business management and basic accounting, which banks always claimed were for individuals who couldn't perform actual work. I'd spend my mornings at Sunny's, afternoons studying, and evenings at work. Rinse, repeat. Look, I'm not going to pretend that what transpired didn't leave me messed up. Trust concerns more like trust subscriptions, which I could cancel if someone came too near. I'd made only 2 pals in 5 years. My neighbor Doug, who played bass in a horrible garage band and occasionally gave me homemade beer that tasted like hoppy dishwater, and Geraldine, assuming she counted as a friend rather than a boss. That changed when Kendra began appearing at Sunny's every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork. She always had the same item, Denver omelet with no tomatoes and extra coffee. She was often seated at the counter with a textbook med school. I subsequently realized she had this tendency of fully shutting off when studying for several minutes. She held the fork halfway to her mouth. I started timing her once, and her time was 7 minutes and 23 seconds before she recognized. She was holding cold eggs. I had been giving her coffee refills for 4 months before she noticed me. I mean, you genuinely saw me. Her eyes widened significantly as she stated that my name tag was spelled improperly. It wasn't. But it became our bizarre little joke. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she would point out that I was wearing the wrong name. Salvador. 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 I would pretend to be shocked. The most foolish flirtation ever took place. However, it was successful. We didn't even plan on going on a date on our first date. She had a reservation at this difficult-to-get-in pizza place, and her study group abruptly canceled. She got the cancellation SMS as I was scrubbing the counter. The next thing I knew, I was at Antonio's sitting across from her. We both realized uncomfortably that this was just like a date. She moved into my apartment 6 months later. Together, we moved into a somewhat bigger space a year later. It was a simple 2-bedroom apartment with a bathroom that did not have a toilet that ran constantly and neighbors who did not practice space solos at 2 in the morning. In the meantime, I kept tabs on my family using fictitious accounts. It's there, and I'm not proud of it. With the opening of the Home Depot on the outskirts of town, Dad's hardware business began to crumble. I saw him discussing it on neighborhood Facebook sites, with comments getting more irrational and offensive. With frequent posts about how much she missed her boys and old pictures of us all grinning, Mom's social media turned to become a strange monument to family. She would accompany me, but she would never bring me up, as though I had vanished. Alan posted hazy updates about detractors and new possibilities while hopping from job to job. The typical smokescreen on social media for someone whose life is in a downward spiral. After 3 years, Geraldine came up to me while I was doing inventory and told me she was thinking of starting a second Sunny store on the other side of town. Instead of asking me to own it, she asked if I would want to operate it. This is a crucial distinction. I kept thinking it was a test or a joke, so I didn't sleep that night. Opportunities like that were not available to someone like me. Thank you for making sure I understood it. The issue with toxic ideas is that long after you have left the serpent, they are still there in your body. Kendra, who was half asleep next to me, remarked in a whisper that it would be foolish not to dig through a cloud of cannabis smoke, so I answered sure. Of course, she was right. Geraldine wasn't, so you nearly sprint to the original location already. Banks had never made me feel unworthy and was not a member of my family. 6 months later, Sunny Zest launched with a revamped cuisine and a smaller space than its predecessor. My menu. I shed 10 pounds that I couldn't afford to lose during my first year of working 90-hour weeks. Kendra and I got into a fight over my inability to be home. Several times, I returned home to find passive-aggressive post-its on the refrigerator, but they were effective. People showed up. People returned. The ambiance was pleasant, and the food was excellent. We were getting by, but we weren't becoming rich. I made enough money to help Kendra with her medical school loans 4 years after I was abandoned. Not every one of them. Even though the creatures are hideous, they have an effect. When I gave her the payment confirmation, she started crying. Beautiful mascara, tears, but not the kind of sobbing shown in movies. Real crying that is snotty, red-faced, and hiccuping. That was the first time I had ever felt like a real person. My grandma passed away. Mom captioned this long emotional dedication with 1,000,000 heart emoticons, which is how I learned about it on Facebook. The only family member to ever oppose banks was Grandma Rose. Only one person seemed to notice me. When no one was watching, she would give me $20 sand, tell me to save it for my getaway. She must have meant college. More literal than that, it turned out. I even checked up airfares because I was thinking of attending the funeral. Kendra promised to accompany me and support me during the tense reunion. Instead, Doug offered to let me drive his awful hatchback. Dead people don't know if you're there or not, Geraldine grunted. So, do whatever makes you feel at ease. I didn't go. I sent flowers instead. Salvador signed this generic condolence card, which had no note or return address. I'm alone. The social media response was swift. Mom is contacting people from beyond and sharing about signals. Alan's comments regarding prodigal sons were vague. Regards. I couldn't image the commotion behind closed doors, so I kept quiet in public. I didn't recognize the profile that sent me a friend request a week later. No posts, no friends, and a random name. I was on the verge of deleting it when I saw the message. Uncle Rick is here. I got your old email from your mom, but it bounced back. Are you all right? We've been concerned. Your father has been inquiring about you. I blocked the account that evening. It was the first panic episode I'd experienced in 2 years. I was sitting on the floor of our bathroom at 3 in the morning, trying not to wake Kendra, feeling as like my lungs were giving out, and that banks were after me. Arriving at Sunny's and demolishing all I had constructed. An hour or so later, Kendra found me. There were no inquiries from her. She just sat next to me and touched my shoulder. When I was able to breathe at last, the simplest thing she said, nothing that you don't offer them can be taken from you. Just in case, I phoned a lawyer the next morning to get advice on restraining orders. I changed all of the privacy settings, and I asked Geraldine to tell the employees not to share any information about me with anybody. Doable actions. Strength. What? You are in control. It has been 5 years since the abandonment. Kendra and I got married in a small ceremony at a state park. My best man was Doug. Geraldine sobbed while preparing the cake. She poured mascara over her creased cheeks. I was greeted right away by Kendra's big, noisy family. Her mother hugging me without raising any red flags in my mind, and her father making dad jokes that didn't make me gag. The problem with family is that, even if you're not looking, it can still find you. I came across it late one night while browsing my dummy account, a week after the wedding. Regards. Posted a request for information about his son Salvador, whose last known location is Grand Junction, Colorado, on a local website. A family emergency has arisen. No emergency was present. This was something I already knew. I didn't understand why they were now looking for me after we had been silent for 5 years. I thus looked into it more, created a new fake account, joined local organizations, and pieced everything together. The hardware store was no longer open. They had a foreclosed home. In addition to Alan returning home after his third DUI, Mom was unsure about several medical issues. They needed something, not because they missed me, which is why they were looking for me. And what do you know? I recalled them with a grin for the first time in 5 years. Not because I was happy about their misfortune, but because I had learned something very important. It didn't matter to me anymore. I shut off the laptop, climbed into bed next to my wife, who was asleep, and decided, not out of love or hate, but because sometimes the best punishment is not what you do, but what you create. I would keep watching from a distance when they're occupied with self-destruction. We have an update at last. 15 years after being abandoned at that rest stop in Colorado, it all started with a LinkedIn notice. I had a glitch in my well-planned life. In a single day, my profile was viewed 27 times. Such irrational actions by LinkedIn recruiters are not uncommon. My brother's name, Alan Matthew, was noteworthy. The problem with the past is that it has patience. Years will pass before it strikes, lingering in the dense grass. My life had altered significantly from my first year in Grand Junction by that point. Kendra was working 3 days a week at a nearby clinic after completing her residency and medical school in order to spend more time with our kids at home. Ellie was 7, Marcus was 4, and we had 2. A modest 4-bedroom house on the outskirts of town had replaced the flat above the laundry. Not much, just a yard where I could plant tomatoes and the kids could play. Even yet, they never fully clicked. There were now 3 sunny sites. Although it wasn't a big franchise or anything, it was enough that I wasn't required to staff the line anymore, unless someone phoned in sick. Even though Geraldine was semi-retired 2 years prior, she nevertheless showed up out of the blue to provide criticism on our method of making her pie crust recipe. I had reconciled with my history, or so I believed. Although I continued to monitor the family remotely, the frequency of my visits had decreased to perhaps once every several months. Regards. Additionally, after losing their house, Irene had downsized. I thought so. Alan has a spouse, remarried after a divorce. Like me, they all appear to have moved on with their lives. However, after 15 years of silence, the LinkedIn issue still troubled me. As we went about our Sunday night routine of folding clothes and half watching whatever Netflix series we were presently behind on, I brought it up to Kendra. With a mismatched sock in each hand, she halted and inquired about my well-being. I gave a nod. Could I say anything else? That I was at a rest stop, suddenly 22 years old again, and that I could hear Banks' voice in my mind saying that I was worthless? Since our supplier had once again shipped the incorrect kind of coffee filters, I was helping with inventory at Sunny's East, the original second location. 3 days later, Maya at the front desk phoned me back to let me know that a family was trying to find me. The first thing that sprang to mind was Kendra's parents, who would sometimes surprise us by passing through. I walked out front, already thinking about how I might get them to remain for dinner. Kendra's family wasn't involved. Thanks' once inspiring body had become smaller, and he looked older and grayer. Irene's hair had been dyed an unnatural shade of brown, and her face was pinched from years of effort. At 40, Alan had the same posture and method of occupying space as Banks. I didn't recognize the woman who was with them. She appeared to be in her early 20s and was standing back, perhaps unsure of her place. No one said anything. My own heartbeat pounded in my ears as the din of the lunch rush subsided. First to break? Banks asked for my name. My voice had clearly taken a holiday, so I nodded. Look, I would imagine this event in 1,000 different ways throughout 15 years, in some of them. In others, I reprimanded them magnificently. I was cold and aloof, indifferent to their presence. We even had an emotional reconciliation in a few embarrassing late-night circumstances. Usually, reality is messier than fantasy. I gestured toward a vacant table in the corner, requested water from Maya, waited while sitting across from the people who used to be my family. They had learned about me via a Rocky Mountain Rising magazine article, 10 Tales of Local Success. It wasn't even a significant characteristic, just a picture of myself in front of Sunny's original location in the sidebar. However, it was clear that one of Mom's acquaintances from high school had relocated to Colorado. "Isn't this your son?" I saw it and sent it to her with the caption, "In the years prior to my number being terminated, they made 107 missed calls to it." Mom had done the math. She made reference to this as though it had significance. They were talking over each other. Mom talked about how concerned they had been that I had misunderstood what had transpired that day. Alan was awkwardly attempting to act as though we were catching up with old pals. The young woman only looked at me curiously. She was Poppy, Alan's second wife. I let them to speak as I observed how they created a narrative in which they were not the bad guys. I saw how Banks kept examining the eatery while figuring out its estimated value in his head. As Mom reached for her drink, I saw her fingers tremble a little. Alan's calculated charm seemed to waver any time he believed I wasn't looking him in the eye. When they finally lost steam, I posed the crucial question, why now? Then, amid awkward silences, the real story began to come to light in fragments. Banks had no insurance, heart problems, and medical expenses. They were foreclosing on the second house. Alan's odd cryptocurrency-related business concept had failed miserably. Mom couldn't afford the knee surgery she needed. They were there for financial gain, not for reconciliation. I ought to have become upset, ought to have discarded them. Rather, I experienced a surprising feeling. I feel sorry. They were so frail and in need. These titans, who once dominated my entire universe, were just broken, flawed humans. I invited them to dinner that evening, stating that I wanted time to think and talk to Kendra. They eagerly concurred. Banks are already on the verge of declaring it finalized. It was a strange afternoon. I texted Kendra to let her know who was coming to dinner, picked up Ellie from her dancing class, and helped Marcus with the setup for his preschool show and tell. She offered to take the kids to her sister's house. I wanted them there, so I said no. I want for my family to meet mine. My specialty for dinner was chicken enchiladas. That wasn't really noteworthy. It was just a recipe I had altered over the years, from the back of an old El Paso carton. Without being asked, Ellie carefully arranged the forks on the wrong side of the table until Kendra subtly corrected her. It was Tuesday, and apparently Tuesday is now Spider-Man Day, so Marcus insisted on dressing as Spider-Man. I almost dropped the plate I was carrying to the table when the doorbell rang. Whispering that she had my back nevertheless, Kendra held onto my arm as she went by. The kids saw that something important was occurring and glanced up with attention. The problem with dreaded moments is that they happen. They are both better and worse than you anticipated. Even after revisions, the introductions were clunky. Thank you for continuing to call Kendra Karen. Irene's inability to stop sobbing whenever she saw the children frightened Marcus. The least awful were Poppy and Alan, who really tried to have a civil conversation. Alan, however, continued to imply that family supports family. Kendra gave me a look that said, "Text if you need extraction," and took the kids upstairs for showers and bedtime after supper. Then we sat in a living room that seemed too small, just the two of us. On the field, Thanks started out by discussing how families stick together, how he had always felt I would be a good ally, and how they just needed $20,000 to get back on their feet on their own. Naturally, I allowed him to go on. I inquired as to whether he could recall what he had told me on my 18th birthday. He looked blankly. I told him that if you are no longer legally my issue, at least you won't be able to let me down. After I threw away my acceptance letter to community college, I asked my mother if she remembered what she had done. Nothing. She hadn't taken any action. When my first girlfriend arrived to the house looking for me, I asked Alan whether he recalled telling her that I was most likely, anyhow. They writhed and offered justifications. Regards. I used to cower when the voice took on a terrible edge. Here's what occurred, though. I stopped becoming smaller. That person and I were separated by 15 years. I went to work, came back with an envelope, and took it to the banks. The amount on the check was $73.50. Banks looked at it, confused, wondering what in the world this was meant to be. In 2010, I replied, "A Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction to our hometown would have cost just that amount. The precise amount I would have needed to return home from the place where you left me." There was complete silence. Then Banks started yelling at me, accusing me of being a disappointment throughout my life and labeling me avaricious and ungrateful. The greatest hits album from my early years is being played again. I didn't yell back or dispute. I just got to my feet and told them it was time to go. Mom had a different strategy. Guilt and tears. How could I harm my family like this? Alan became icy. The kind brother's mask had completely fallen off. When they finally left, Poppy just looked ashamed for them all. The check was crumpled by Banks and left at our door. I leaned against the door and shut it. My legs are getting wobbly. Kendra asked me if I was okay when she arrived downstairs. Unconfident in my own voice, I nodded. Like any other night, we quietly washed the dinner dishes, checked on the sleeping kids, and got ready for bed. I used my phone to access the front entry camera while I was setting up the security system. They continued to argue in the driveway. While his mother is crying, Banks is making aggressive gestures. Alan was observing our home with a mindset that I am all too familiar with, hatred mixed with jealousy. At last, they got into their rental car and left. I haven't seen or spoken to them since. Don't expect to. This concludes the chapter. That's the problem with retaliation. The finest kind is not something you do, but something you live. Every sweet moment spent with my kids, every private joke with Kendra, every Sunday morning is calm and worry-free. And each typical day in a life that I have built. I never returned home. I made a superior move. I built one. I appreciate you watching. Please click the notification bell if you haven't already in order to receive updates on additional startling real-life stories that are happening in your area. Story 3. My sister was pampered, while I was constantly ignored. She said that only the actual family could stay together. Thus, she wouldn't reserve a place for me this Christmas. Hi Reddit, I'm Lily, a 28-year-old project manager at a Seattle-based technology company. I'm happy to announce that I've built a great life for myself, and I earn a respectably comfortable $135 a year. But it wasn't handed to me. It is the outcome of many hours of work, preparation, and effort. My sister Victoria, 30F, had a silver spoon in her mouth while I was growing up. She is the golden kid of the family. She was the pride and joy of my parents. James, 59 million, and Maria, 57 million. Victoria grew up in a perfect world. Nothing has ever required her to work for it. In addition to buying her a car and covering her education expenses, my parents also helped with the down payment on her first house. I chose a new path in the interim. While I was in college, I worked part-time jobs, surviving off of scholarships and barely making ends meet to cover my utilities and rent. I had no debt when I finished, but I was exhausted. 62 million, Uncle William. One of the few persons who took note of my diligence was my mother's brother. He built his real estate business from the ground up and became a self-made millionaire. He never had his own children. As a result, he has consistently shown our family generosity, but he thinks you have to earn what you have. He therefore acknowledged my choice to forge my own career, even if he provided financial assistance for Victoria and my parents. Victoria and her $32 million spouse, Daniel, seemed to lead a lovely life. It's all a front, though. The funny thing is that Victoria has a ton of carefully chosen photos from their trips on her Instagram. Nathan's expensive outings, and 8 million private school functions. However, if you look behind the scenes, Uncle William owns all of the money. Neither she nor Daniel have a valid job. Although Daniel works in sales in theory, his performance is at most mediocre. Victoria has never held a job before. She claims to be a full-time mother. Let's be honest, though. She has a nanny. My parents are also fully funded by Uncle William. He covers their monthly expenditures and medical bills, and they reside in a beautiful retirement community in Arizona. They never saved anything for retirement because my mother is a teacher and my father worked in factories for much of his life. However, they don't seem to regret depending on Uncle William. They behave as though they were born with it. You're the only person in our family who understands what it's like to be independent. Uncle William once told me, Lily. That seemed like someone finally understood my struggle. Thus, hearing that meant the world to me. Although I am aware that Victoria is upset with me for our connection, the fact is that she would not be able to function without him. I'm okay with the fact that I no longer have any expectations of my parents. Seeing them continuously appease Victoria and treat her like a saint for spending money she doesn't even have is incredibly upsetting. The thing that irritates me the most is Victoria's pride. She frequently boasts about her lifestyle, sarcastically claiming that I work too hard or lack the ability to enjoy life. In actuality, though, I'm happy. Even if my life isn't as spectacular as hers, it is still genuine and special to me. Let's just say that this Christmas season went out of control. Uncle William takes the family on a big, lavish vacation every Christmas. I'll admit that it's fun for a few days, and we've been doing it for years. We like fine dining, stay in opulent hotels, and sometimes even get along. Now that we are all living in different areas, Uncle William likes to go all out, and I think that's how he keeps the family together. He decided on a ski resort close to Aspen this year. Even though I'm not very good at skiing, I was excited since Aspen in December is so beautiful. Furthermore, I don't take opulent vacations every day. Uncle William made the first error by giving Victoria the task of making all reservations, but he has always trusted her to manage these matters, perhaps because she has plenty of spare time and nothing better to do. I thought about volunteering, but I didn't want to offend anyone. Even if she is merely using Uncle William's money to schedule things, Victoria likes to be the planner since it gives her the opportunity to take credit for everything. What could possibly go wrong then? Due to work, I scheduled my trip and got to Aspen a little later than everyone else. I had to complete everything before I left since my company had a big project deadline. After hauling my bag through the snow, I arrived at the resort at around 4 p.m. The landscape was breathtaking. Pictured mountains coated in snow. Everywhere were charming little cottages draped with brilliant lights. It resembled a scene from a Christmas film, with its enormous stone fireplace, lofty ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. The main lodge was even more exquisite. Families were sipping hot chocolate and lounging by the fire. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, and couples were arriving from the slopes. I expected a kind greeting as I approached the front desk, but the receptionist gave me this confused look instead. She apologized, ma'am, as she worked feverishly on her computer. Under your name, we don't have a reservation. I initially believed that Victoria could have just forgotten to add me. Errors occur. Victoria, however, remembered. She did it deliberately. As soon as she entered the foyer, I knew I was going to hear a patronizing, passive-aggressive comment. Victoria always found a way to turn any situation into a chance to feel better about herself, and today was no exception. She appeared as though she was getting ready to create a winter coat advertising. Elegant attire, immaculate hair, and a broad smile that could shatter glass. "Oh, Lily," she said, seeming surprised to see me. "I only reserved accommodations for the actual family. Didn't I tell you? Daniel, Nathan, me, and, of course, our parents. It's the most astonished stillness I think I've ever experienced. How would you react to such a situation?" It was clear from her description of the real family that she did not think I belonged to them. The icing on the cake was that she didn't apologize. I turned to face my parents in the hopes that they would step in and say something, but they just avoided making eye contact. Not enough to do action, but enough to seem ashamed. Victoria continued, of course. She has no idea when to stop. But you're really self-sufficient, aren't you? In that fake pretty voice she uses when she's being mean but really making fun of you?" she questioned. "You can probably locate anything close by." Then, as though the whole situation were a joke, she laughed. Even though I could feel my cheeks getting red, I refused to show her how upset I was. Over the years, I've discovered that Victoria thrives on making others feel inferior, and the simplest way to deal with her is to seem as though she doesn't bother you. I inhaled deeply, pretended to grin, and added, "Okay, have a great vacation." After that, I picked up my bag and left. I was leaving the foyer. Victoria's arrogant gaze was palpable on my back. I'm sure she thought she'd won and made me seem foolish. She could have had a small amount, but I refused to let her spoil my vacation. In actuality, Victoria has already done a similar stunt. She's been the queen of exclusion all along. Whether it's inadvertently failing to invite me to family dinners or deftly withholding information about events until it's too late for me to go, she seems to take sick delight in reminding me that I am not welcome in her sight. What about my parents? She has consistently gotten away with it. "Oh, that's just Victoria," someone will remark, or "she didn't mean it that way." As though her actions were ineffective. This, however, felt different. This was no dinner party or informal get-together. It was Christmas, a tradition in the family, and she knew how painful it would be, so she deliberately left me out. When I finally stepped outside, I was upset. Even though the cold air hit my face, I remained unfazed. Determined to find another somewhere to stay, I pulled out my phone and started looking for nearby hotels. I had no intention of crawling back to my parents or Victoria and pleading for a place to sleep. I explored for a few minutes and found another opulent hotel about 10 minutes away. A suite was offered, even though it was ridiculously expensive. I didn't mind. I refused to let Victoria's trivial antics spoil my Christmas. I gave Kate and Grace, two of my closest pals, a call. This year, neither of them had any exciting plans for Christmas. Grace had recently broken up with someone, so she wasn't in the mood to celebrate, and Kate's family was out of town. "Hello, what are your thoughts on spending Christmas in Aspen?" I asked for a response. They didn't even think twice. They were on their way in a matter of hours. We turned my apartment into our own private Christmas retreat that night. After ordering everything from burgers to desserts from room service, we unwinded in the outdoor hot tub with a view of the mountains. I lay in the hot tub and, for the first time that day, felt as though I was on vacation as the steam rose into the crisp night air. We started talking to Victoria about the whole situation. Kate found it hard to believe. In fact, she claimed that you were not a member of the royal family. Grace gives a head shake. This is a new low for her, but she's always been a piece of work. We went back to the suite later that evening and switched on the Christmas tunes. We laughed till our sides ached, ate much too much chocolate, and danced about in our pajamas. We had a sleepover and forgot about everything else, feeling like children once more. I made the decision to post a few Instagram stories. Not that I was trying to be petty. All right. I might have been a bit spiteful, but I wanted Victoria to know that my trip had not been ruined by her small gesture. I included a picture of our ridiculous room service spread, a video of us dancing in our suite, and a video of us in the hot tub with the mountains in the backdrop. The first person to notice them was Victoria. Her anger was nearly palpable over the TV. She probably couldn't stand the idea that I was enjoying myself more than she was. Knowing her, Victoria must have been annoyed to see me content and uninterested since she lives on attention. Uncle William texted me the next morning. He asked to have breakfast with me at my hotel. I was both relieved and anxious, since I knew he had heard something about what had transpired at the other resort. Uncle William doesn't engage in gameplay with his relatives. He was sitting at a corner table, drinking coffee, and looking as cool as usual when I encountered him in the hotel restaurant. One of those people who attracts attention without even trying is Uncle William. He is straightforward, intelligent, and always seems to be 10 steps ahead of the competition. Despite our polite conversation, he quickly got to the point. "So, Lily," he said, setting down his coffee cup, "what took place in the lodge?" I inhaled deeply before I told him everything. Victoria's haughty little speech about making reservations for the real family started as soon as I got there and realized I didn't have a reservation. Nothing was sugar-coated by me. I didn't want to come out as whiny, though. As I spoke, I only stated the facts. Uncle William's face changed, and I saw it. He first just appeared contemplative, but as I went on, his expression worsened. He was shaking his head in shock when I was done. Quietly and firmly, he said, "I trusted Victoria to handle the booking for everyone. It's unbelievable that she left you out in that way, and your parents did nothing but watch it happen." I gave a nod. Basically, Uncle William leaned back in his chair and let out a breath. He said, "Unbelievable." Our food was delivered by the waiter. I had pancakes. Uncle William had toast and eggs, and we sat in silence for a minute while he processed it. He finally set down his fork and gave me a quick look. "Lily, don't worry, I'll handle this." When he said, "Take care of this," I wasn't sure what he meant, but I wasn't going to argue. Uncle William is someone who keeps his word, if that's one thing I've learned about him. He excused himself and went to his room after breakfast. Kate and Grace were already up and planning our day when I got back to my suite. I kept my conversation with Uncle William to myself, mostly because I was unsure of what would happen next, but I had a hunch it would become interesting. I got my response a couple of hours later. Uncle William didn't hold back, I can assure you. Update 1, a week has passed after the Christmas event, and boy, have things gotten out of hand. Uncle William was honest when he promised to take care of everything. Let me tell you what transpired after our breakfast conversation. Initially, Uncle William didn't only revoke their hotel bookings. He instantly stopped providing Victoria and my parents with any financial help. No warning is given. There isn't a consistent drop. Just stop helping. Victoria's dreamy existence turned out to be a house of cards, and everything abruptly fell apart. The rejection of Victoria's credit cards was the first sign of trouble. Uncle William had apparently been covering the costs as well. She tried to hide it, but when she had to postpone Nathan's winter break activities due to financial constraints, news got out. Then the problem of mortgage payments arose. Without his assistance, Uncle William had been helping them maintain their lifestyle in their affluent area by paying their monthly expenses. They're attempting to determine how to maintain their house. Daniel doesn't make enough money from commission-based sales to cover their expenses. Victoria's financial denial has left them with virtually no savings. Which section is the most ironic? Victoria started getting in touch with me all the time, leaving voicemails that varied from sorrowful entreaties to furious accusations. "How could you harm us like this?" In a single message, she yelled. "We had to postpone Nathan's private tennis lessons, which is why he is weeping. Are you content now?" She tried to guilt-trip me in another message. "I realize I messed up during Christmas, but do you really want to see your nephew go through this?" None of her texts have received a response from me. It's almost comical how much she needs my assistance now after treating me like I wasn't a royal family member for years. It's not being handled well by my parents. They may have to leave their retirement community because they cannot afford the monthly costs without Uncle William's assistance. Mom called me in tears. "We are too old to make a fresh start." She sobbed. "Are you unable to speak with your uncle? You can talk to him." I was astounded by the conceit of the request. After years of ignoring my feelings and putting up with Victoria's behavior, are they truly counting on me to speak out for them? Dad expressed his displeasure with my lack of family devotion in a lengthy email to me. He claims that by turning Uncle William against the family, I'm being spiteful and petty. He purposely neglected to emphasize that during Victoria's deception, they showed no loyalty to me. What about all of this is the most fulfilling? Victoria's Instagram is now completely dark. No more well-planned family photos or frequent updates about her contented life. No more smug boasting about Nathan's expensive private school or their opulent vacations. The phrase "family is everything" was used in her most recent post, which was published before to Christmas. The irony is nearly flawless. Yesterday, Uncle William gave me a call to see how I was doing. He wasn't boasting. He doesn't do that. However, he made a statement that really stuck with me. It is often necessary to lose everything in order to see the value of anything. He said that despite being inundated with calls and letters from both Victoria and my parents, he is refusing to back down. He said, "They made their decision. They can now tolerate it." As I see everything fall apart, I must admit that I feel a bit bad. However, I recall Victoria's arrogant statement in the hotel lobby that I wasn't a part of the real family. I recall how my parents disregarded her behavior throughout the years. making me feel unworthy since I choose to blaze my own trail instead of depending on government assistance. Throughout all, Kate and Grace have been incredibly helpful. They just have to deal with the fallout from their own deeds. During our coffee date yesterday, Kate said that Grace continued, "Perhaps this will help them realize that material wealth isn't everything. I'm focusing on my personal and professional lives in the interim. A promotion is being discussed soon, and our company's key project is moving along nicely. It's strange that the life I've built for myself becomes stronger, while Victoria's tidy world falls apart. I've never wanted to see my family suffer or seek revenge. Being treated with dignity and accepted as an equal member of the family was all I ever desired. It is regrettable that they had to resort to such severe measures in order to understand the consequences of their actions. Sometimes, though, that's all that's needed. My parents, Victoria, and Daniel will learn the importance of independence. Perhaps then kids would understand the value of independence and hard effort, which Uncle William always recognized in me." Report 2. A month has passed since my last report, and my family's situation has drastically changed. Daniel and Victoria had to sell their house. Without Uncle William's assistance, they would not have been able to pay their mortgage for 2 months. Victoria isn't happy that they've relocated to a little rental home on the outskirts of town. What has changed the most? Nathan was forced to transfer to the local public school from his upscale private school. On social media, Victoria tried to present it as a conscious choice to provide Nathan with a more authentic experience. However, everyone is aware that she was no longer able to pay the $30,000 yearly tuition. Weeks have passed since she last updated her Instagram account, which was formerly replete with pictures from school fundraisers and galas. Observing Victoria's efforts to maintain her look is the most amusing aspect. A few months ago, when some of her high-end parent friends approached her, she was seen at Target buying house furniture, something she would have considered beneath her. She was practically hidden under the seasonal exhibits there. At school pickup, the people she used to plan charity luncheons with now act as though they don't know her. Daniel has been forced to put in more effort in his sales position. Long lunch breaks and golf meetings are over. He's now realizing that he's just another dreadful salesman attempting to hit quotas without Uncle William's connections and covert financial support. Downsizing has also been necessary for my parents. They moved to a smaller apartment complex after selling their condo in the exclusive retirement community. Mom continues saying that until they can sort things out with William, it will just be temporary. However, I think they know deep down that this is their new reality. Which development is the most shocking? After 15 years of being a full-time mother and nanny, Victoria actually had to start looking for a job. She is aware of how narrow her skill set is. She said that her expertise running her own brand on Instagram qualifies her for certain marketing chances, but she hasn't received any offers as of yet. I recently received a promotion to senior project manager. I understand the irony. My job is flourishing, but they are all having a hard time adjusting to live within their means. Uncle William brought me a beautiful flower along with a message that said, "Success is the best revenge." I celebrated by treating myself to a magnificent bottle of champagne. "I'm proud of you." Kate said something interesting yesterday. "Take note of the fact that none of them have truly expressed regret to you. All of them apologize for being caught and losing their dinner ticket." She's right. Nobody has spoken among the sobs, accusations, and cries for assistance. "I apologize for treating you like a stranger." Some folks never learn, I guess. They can't comprehend what went wrong in the first place because they are too preoccupied with regretting their lost way of life. Update 3. 3 months have passed since everything changed, and I'm finally prepared to share the details. Now that the dust has cleared, everyone's actual selves are more apparent than before. Last week was my birthday, and Uncle William gave me a heartfelt handmade note that made me cry. He penned, "Dear Lily, one of my favorite things has been seeing you create your life the way you want it to be. Despite your difficulties, you are strong. They are to blame. You have never given yourself a better gift than independence. I'm proud of you, always." His card showed up just in time, because I had recently finished the papers required for my promotion to senior project manager. I was given a significant increase in stock options. Right now, I make $165,000 a year plus bonuses. I understand the irony. Thanks to Uncle William's secret help, I'm now making more than Daniel did during his prime. The new reality for Victoria and Daniel has truly sunk in. Victoria was forced to accept a position at a nearby real estate company as an administrative assistant. It's ironic that after years of living in luxury owing to Uncle William's real estate enterprise, you now work in the industry. For the first time in her life, she is reporting to a boss and finds it difficult to do simple office duties. Without Uncle William's business connections to provide him opportunities, Daniel's commission-based sales have reached an all-time low. He is aware of how terrible his sales skills are. They now share an outdated Honda Civic after having to sell both of their expensive cars. Only Nathan appeared to be adapting well to their new circumstances. He joined the soccer team and found friends at his new public school. Paradoxically, he seems content now that Victoria isn't in charge of every aspect of his life, with special teachers and expensive activities. For the first time in years, my parents had to learn how to manage their finances. They and most of their pals no longer belong to the country club. Just a few months ago, Dad would have considered driving for Uber to be beneath him, but now he's attempting to increase their income. Having been unemployed for a long time has made it difficult for Mom to seek into substitute teaching once more. As if she had a choice, Victoria started a lifestyle blog about living simply. Her first article talked about how they discovered happiness in cooking at home after their weekly budget for eating out ran out. Her obvious attempt to present her forced lifestyle changes as spontaneous choices drew strong criticism from several of the answers. They are in a grave situation. Attempts to get in touch with me have also changed. At first, it was all anger and charges. Then came the emotional manipulation and guilt trip. They are currently adopting a new strategy, humility. So, pretend to be humble. Victoria sent me a long email explaining how this experience has taught her a lot and how, up until now, she had never understood the value of hard effort. Without saying sorry for what she had done, she was still able to make it all about herself. Mom and Dad have been texting each other about moving ahead as a family and repairing the family. Dad even suggested that I might provide them financial support because I'm doing so well. I'm still amazed at the haughtiness. They act as though I owe them anything because I am successful. Last week, Uncle William got in touch with me and shared some intriguing news. Victoria had shown up at his workplace without warning, trying to explain her version of the story. He says she sobbed in the lobby, creating such a scene that security had to pull her out. Her performance did not move him. He said that crocodile tears don't cover expenses. Instead of genuinely changing, she is still attempting to coerce her way back into my pocketbook. I bought my first home last weekend, a beautiful condo in a hip area of Seattle. Everything I did was by myself. I negotiated the conditions of my mortgage, saved for a down payment, and was granted a mortgage based on my own credit and income. No amount of inherited money could ever give me the sense of success I had when I got the keys. Victoria continues to view the entire situation as a brief setback that she must deal with until things get back to normal. She is unaware that this is commonplace. Most individuals have to deal with the basic realities of earning their own way, living within their means, and taking responsibility for their actions on a daily basis. I've discovered that genetics isn't what defines a family. It all comes down to who agrees with you. I have received more sincere family support from Uncle William, Kate, and Grace than I have ever had from my parents or sister. The family you choose might occasionally be more genuine than the one you were born into. Thus, here I am doing very well at work. I'm at last free of the toxic family dynamics that formerly held me back. Living in my own house, getting even isn't always the best form of retaliation. It's about never looking back and always going ahead. I appreciate you watching. Please click the notification bell if you haven't already in order to receive updates on additional startling real-life stories that are happening in your area.